Transforming bracket!
What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is obviously my latest catch-up video. This time it is for the month of November. This is where I talk about all the films in the month of November of 2022 that were 2022 films that I saw in said month. I will not be talking about these movies in depth. I will just be talking about them very briefly. If you don't want to hear my full in-depth thoughts on these movies, you guys can check out my reviews on Letterboxd. If you're not familiar with Letterboxd, it's a great app where it brings movie buffs, casual moviegoers, critics all together. It's a great app. It's basically Instagram, but for movie buffs, movie critics, and just casual goers. It's great. Definitely check it out. My link is down below. But yeah, so I'm going to be talking about these movies. I saw 11 movies from 2022 in the month of November, so I'll be talking about them. And guys, without further ado, let's get started, guys. No more exposition. So, kicking things off, the beginning of the month of November, I saw the movie Fall, finally. I know they came out earlier, I think it was like in the summer. And I was curious about this movie. And truth be told, it was one of those movies that while I was watching it, it was diverting. But it was like afterwards, as I started actually thinking about it, I was like, yeah, it was kind of disappointing. It's by no means a terrible movie, but it is a movie that just really doesn't have any lasting effect other than, oh, there's some cool shots here and there. But the character decisions, just the motivations, just a lot of things, just it's like, so it's a movie that I can see why some people might like, but for myself, I was kind of disappointed by, and left me pretty cold. And that's why for me, Fall, I personally would be giving a. Next up, we have Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, which is a sequel to the 2018 hit film Black Panther. Now, this was a movie that I was quite looking forward to, not going to lie. Despite being pretty disappointed by pretty much all of the movies from Phase 4 of the MCU, this was a film I was still looking forward to because Ryan Coogler is a director I greatly admire. I really, really like Fruitvale Station. I really, really like Creed, and Black Panther, really, really good. So where does Black Panther Wakanda Forever fall? I will say that it is easily the best movie of the MCU in terms of the Phase 4. Not saying much, I know, but it's still really, really good. And the movie itself is pretty darn good. I thought that the runtime flew by for myself personally. Like, this is a movie that you feel the characters' emotions. It's very raw. And the humor that we all know in terms of the MCU, where it's like trying to be funny, takes a back seat for more in-depth drama that I greatly admire. And the villain is also pretty interesting. Ludwig Göransson's score is amazing, per usual. It's pretty good in terms of the cinematography, costume design, very meticulous in terms of the filmmaking. I greatly admire this. And this is a yet another example of an MCU movie done right, where it's like it continues the story of the MCU, but it's also a movie that people that don't follow the MCU can follow along. And I greatly admire that approach, and I think that that's something that they should utilize more. So for me personally, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I personally will be giving a. Next up, we have Do Revenge, which is on Netflix, and I didn't like this movie. I really didn't. The chemistry between the two leads is pretty good for the most part. But other than that, this is a movie that, I'm not gonna lie, on Netflix I paused it, and I said to myself before pausing it, it's probably about well into an hour into this movie, right? No, it was only 20 minutes, and that doesn't happen to me too often. But in this case, Do Revenge, man, this 2 hour runtime, it really, really felt like 4 hours. I'm not even kidding. I can see why some people might like it. Like on my Letterboxd, I do see that there are people that respect this movie, but for me, I just didn't really like it. It felt very cliched. The pacing was laborious. The tone was all over the place. It's just a movie that feels very, very incohesive. And again, I really felt that length. So for me personally, Do Revenge, I personally will be giving a. Next up, we have A Christmas Story Christmas, which is an HBO Max movie. This is the sequel to A Christmas Story, the 1983 movie that I like a lot. It's a movie I'm looking forward to revisiting because I haven't seen it in years. But it is a movie that, in terms of being in middle school and then a teenager and whatnot, it was something that I did revisit quite a lot, especially around the holidays. So I had to check out this sequel, Christmas Story Christmas, and I gotta say it's pretty disappointing. Like it feels like your typical nostalgia dripped movie that just has no self awareness in terms of understanding that it's okay to try to tell your own story whilst at the same time still fitting into that nudge of like what a Christmas story was. But this movie doesn't understand that, and it does its own thing in terms of just hitting all the beats and just being there. It's a very forgettable movie. It doesn't really do anything memorable, and it just again feels like it's trying to hit all the greatest hits from the original. So I personally didn't like this movie. Maybe some people will. I feel like if you're a huge fan of Christmas Story and you just want to have that nostalgia, you might like this movie. But for me, Christmas Story Christmas personally was disappointed. I'll personally be giving it a. Next up, we have See How They Run, which is on HBO Max, and this was a movie I missed in theaters. Like I was looking forward to it, and I was gonna see it in theaters, but it just it wasn't in theaters that long, and next thing I know, it's on HBO Max, so I knew I had to check it out. And I gotta say, after watching it, I am glad that I missed it in theaters because this just feels like a Knives Out knockoff um, meets Wes Anderson, and it just doesn't work in the slightest. It feels very staged in terms of how everything's set up and everything, and it feels very manufactured, which is kind of surprising because the story itself is original. Obviously it's based on, you know, Christie's work and everything, and then Knives Out obviously inspired and everything. But it is in itself original, and I crave originality. But I just thought that the way everything was directed, the way everything was paced, and even the performances, the way everything was executed, it just didn't really feel genuine. And I felt very unengaged by this movie, unfortunately. By the end, by the time they revealed, I was like, oh, okay, I don't know. Like its themes and messages, it has its heart in the right place for sure, but it's just the way it was executed. It just left me feeling rather cold, unfortunately, which is why See How They Run. I personally will be giving a. Next up, we have the Banshees of Inisherin, which I was very much looking forward to. Marmigana is a very talented director. He did Three Billboards in Bruges, Seven Psychopaths. He's a director that, for me, is three for three. But now, after seeing Banshees of Inisherin, he's four for four. This is a really fucking good film. This is the type of film that when you watch it, you can't help but afterward just say feckin' because of the way that these characters talk and everything and just how hilarious it is. It is a film that it's magical. It's why I love films. It's not magical in like a Disney sense. It's magical in the sense that it's just about these characters. It's about these characters interacting with one another, and it delves into a lot of raw emotions. Drama and comedy are woven so well. Great performances. Colin Farrell in particular, man, holy cow, what a performance! Carter Burwell's score, cinematography is very luscious. It invites you into the environment and it makes the environment feel like a character in itself. It's a film that I feel like might not be for those that are wanting a movie that has a lot of plot because truthfully, this movie is kind of light on plot. Like it does have plot for sure, but it's not as focused on that per se as something like say Three Billboards. It is definitely all about the characters, and the acting definitely elevates that. And I gotta say, this is a film that I can't recommend enough. Banshees of Inisherin, I definitely would highly recommend it, and I personally would be giving it a. Next up, we have Bones and All, which is another film I was greatly looking forward to. It's Luca Guadagnino, the same director that did the 2018 remake of Suspiria, as well as Call Me by Your Name. Two films that, by the way, I gave a 5 out of 5. I love both films. They're great. Two very different films, also. But what's ironic about those two films is that Bones and All is almost like the blending of those two because Call Me by Your Name was a romance and Suspiria was a body horror film. So Bones and All is combining those two genres. And I find the blending to be seamless. I absolutely love what Guadagnino did with Bones and All. And I gotta say, I loved this film. This is a film that is very thought provoking with its themes. And asks a lot of interesting questions that Might not be for everyone though, truth be told, because the topic of cannibalism in itself, it's not really something that, let's face it, a lot of people want to talk about. But this film definitely wants to do that. It wants to peel back the layers, so to speak. It's very well acted. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score is incredible. It is simply outstanding. Like, it goes from being really romantic to then the sound mixing slowly creeps in like a haunting, horrifying score that just like is like nails on a chalkboard. It's great stuff. I think that the tone balance is also just something that's amazing. And like I said, it's very well acted. Mark Rylance, I think, in his limited screen time is just, he's a force to be reckoned with, man. And I can't recommend this film enough. But again, I do want to emphasize that it is a film that it's not an easy watch, so therefore it might not be for everyone. But for adventurous film goers, it comes highly recommended. Bones and all, personally, will be giving a. Next up, we have Glass Onion, a Knives Out story. I was fortunate enough to get to experience this in theaters because although Knives Out was a Lionsgate film, it got bought out by Netflix. So Netflix is handling Knives Out 2 and 3. And so, of course, both of those got released, well, are getting released on Netflix. But they came across some deal with AMC where they were going to be releasing, Glass Onion for 1 week and 1 week only. So I got to experience that in theaters, and I'm glad that I did because even though could have waited and everything like a month to see it like on December 23rd around the holidays, it's just experiencing this nearly 2.5 hour movie in theaters was just great. It felt very much so like an energetic, much needed fun time at the theater. Especially because this was something that I saw shortly after seeing See How They Run, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. But Glass Onion proves that it's like Ryan Johnson is able to make different kind of mystery films with each entry. It's not a rehash. In fact, it's the opposite. It's like Glass Onion, the actual murder doesn't take place until like an hour or so into the movie, which is a long time for a murder mystery movie. But he trusts audiences and it pays off because it's a very, very well developed film in terms of like the characters, just the way that the themes and messages are fleshed out. It's a very engaging film. I can't recommend it enough. And, I'm filming this review after the 1 week engagement. So I'll say this, definitely recommend you checking it out on Netflix when it comes out December 23rd. A personally, Glass Onion Knives Out story, I will be giving a. Next up, we have She Said, which is the movie about Harvey Weinstein and the taking down of him, being exposed for who he is as an individual, and that topic in itself was something that got me really excited for this movie. Just the peeling back the layers of this journalistic take of what happened and everything, all the research they did and everything, and especially because I heard that it was kind of taking inspiration from the film Spotlight. Spotlight's one of my favorite films of all time. I absolutely love that film. It's a masterpiece in my eyes. And going into this movie, I was like, okay, it's not fair to compare the two because it's not going to be Spotlight. Just see it as its own thing. And as it stands, She Said, it's a solid movie. It feels almost like Cliff Notes, where it's like you're watching it, you see some of the research and everything, but you don't feel like you really get underneath everything in terms of the situations and everything. And that's something I kind of was yearning for. But again, I still think this was solid, and I was engaged throughout. I just feel like because it wasn't as deep as maybe it wanted to be, it just is something that kind of felt more lightweight. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, I suppose, but for me, in terms of rewatchability value, I think it will kind of affect that. But again, still a solid film. And She Said, I personally will be giving a. Next up, we have the Fabelmans, which is the newest Steven Spielberg film. A lot of directors, did movies this month that I was looking forward to. I'm big fans of all these directors, and Steven Spielberg, he's up there, man. He's one of my favorite directors of all time. He's incredible. Can do pretty much any genre, and it's incredible. Just watching him direct is outstanding, and this was no exception. I mean, this is one of the best films of the year thus far. I love The Fablemans. I think that it was incredible incredibly raw, incredibly emotional. Yeah, sentimental at times, but it felt very much so warranted, especially because it was towards the end of the movie. John Williams did a great job with the score. Cinematography is constantly on the move. Feels very Paul Thomas Anderson-esque in the early days of his career in terms of like Magnolia and Boogie Nights, in terms of the way that the camera's constantly moving. And I think that that definitely made the 2.5 hour runtime, kind of fly by. I think it also helps that I just really cared about the characters. It's a very, very well acted film. Every single performance is just perfection. I love this film. Curious about the rewatchability value, but nonetheless, gotta say, Fabelmans, I personally will be giving a. And finally, the last on the menu, so to speak, we have the menu. So I actually just got out of watching this movie, and this was something I was looking forward to quite a bit. But after watching it, I just thought it was okay. I thought the social commentary honestly could have been a bit more sharpened. It just felt too lightweight for my taste. And speaking of lightweight, I understand that it is a dark comedy, but I didn't really find the movie to be that funny. There were definitely some moments that I did laugh out loud, like two or three, I would say, and I chuckled here and there. But for the most part, it's humor that doesn't really stick with me, man. Like, and I feel like that's just on me because I do know a lot of people that do find this movie to be quite funny and that do find the social commentary to be engaging and everything. But I just feel like in not being as deep as it wants to be, it kind of cuts short what it's trying to say. Um, and that's the shame of it. But it's still a movie that it's okay. It's a movie that's very well acted. It's got a great production design, and it is a movie that also, when you're watching it, just the way it's shot and everything, you really want to eat food after watching this movie. And that's also something that you got to give praise in terms of this movie. So, the menu, was I a little bit disappointed by? Yeah, but it's still a movie that I would say is okay. And I personally will be giving a. All right, guys, those are the 11 2022 movies I saw in November. Which movies did you guys watch in the month of November? And which ones are you excited for in the month of December? Let me know in the comment section down below. And guys, once again, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow my letterbox, and I will catch you guys later.